Hello. Um, so this is the comparison between the performance of Postgres and also MySQL, both of which are SQL databases. So let us first see our MySQL database. So here we have again made use of Python and some libraries within Python to connect to our MySQL database. Yeah, so the first thing is basically connection to the MySQL database, creating it. And here we have made use of data from chess that's available on the internet. We just downloaded the CSV files and tried to insert them into our tables. Once we have the data inserted, we try to do some queries on that particular data set. And one thing to note here is that when we execute a query on a computer or on a data set, it will not always give the same time for execution. And this is because although the data is same and the query is same, the amount of computing power that's available to that particular query at that particular time is different. So which is why you see different execution times each time the same query is run. So in order to make up for this, we try to run the same query for multiple times. So for here, for example, we try to run the query for 10 times, but you can increase it to whatever the number that we want. So it's what it's basically doing is it executes the same query these many number of times. And when we want to know the execution time of that particular query, we do an average of all the execution times that we got while running it for 10 times or 20 times or any number of times. So here you can see which is due before executing the query, and after executing the query, we just fetch the time, initial time and the final time, and then subtract them, and we get and we just save the difference. So that's basically the query execution time. That's how we're calculating it. And at the end, we are basically adding everything that we have, uh, uh, all the execution times that we have for running the particular query, and then dividing it with the number of times we run it, which is basically getting the average of the execution times that we have for that query. And here you can see we're doing some simple queries and some complex queries. Simple queries are basically the queries that do not have many where conditions, and the queries that are performed on one single table. So here is an example of a simple query, which is group by, and we have other queries which are complex, like making joins on two different tables. So once we have all these all these queries done, we are making sure that we keep track of all the timings, right? So here we can see a dictionary with all the timings in seconds for the simple queries and for the join queries, which are complex. And we have also made sure that we added indices, like we performed all the queries that we have previously discussed, but this time with indices. So we know that indices should be able to help us reduce the execution time of a particular query. So we wanted to validate that. So this is another way of executing the same queries, but this time having indices on the columns that we need. So once we have executed them, we then try to calculate the same thing, which is the execution times. Of course, for this also, we have run this like 10 times to get the average execution time for each query. And we try to do this, whatever we have done within the MySQL database, we tried this similar thing on our Postgres database as well. So again, we have made use of the Python libraries that we have, and we just loaded the data, the same thing that we have done in MySQL. Again, we have gotten the timings for both Postgres and also MySQL, and we tried to plot a graph. Just give me a second. And here is the graph that we have plotted. So you can see that there isn't much of a difference for simple queries, but as the queries get complex, we can see that there's a huge difference in execution times in both the MySQL and the SQL queries. So here, if you can see the MySQL optimized one, this is the peak. And for the Postgres optimized one are nothing but the ones that have indices on them. So this one. So you can see that Postgres is performing really well compared to the MySQL when we have indices on them. So thank you. In the next demo, you would also see the comparison of SQL versus NoSQL databases.